Health insurance your way.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM in HD1 San Francisco on Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union.
Second free throw missed. Rebound, Jackson Davis. Knox will dribble it out. Final score from Charlotte. The Warriors get the win 119-101. 2-1 on the three-game set. And a chance to go 4-1 on the trip if they can sweep the boroughs of Manhattan. And then over to Queens to take on the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, nice win for the Warriors tonight. In Charlotte, they get the final score, 119-101. The Warriors knock off the Hornets by 18 points. They're now 5 games over 500 once again. And as it currently stands, the Golden State Warriors, they are 6th place in the Western Conference. They have moved past the Clippers. And as we take a look at the updated up to the second standings, the Warriors, again, 33-28, 6th in the West. We've got games going on all around the Western Conference right now. The Grizzlies are in action. The Rockets are in action. Both the Kings and the Mavericks are in action. That Kings-Mavericks game most meaningful for the Warriors right now. Kyrie Irving did go down in this game, and he has not returned. He has already been ruled out, and it is currently a 16-point Kings lead in the third. I'll keep you updated on all of these scores throughout the night, but let's focus here on what the Warriors got done, because this was kind of a scary basketball game. The Warriors led wire to wire, but you never really felt like it was over. And then the Warriors put a run together when Stephen Curry was resting, and that's what put this game away. Steph eventually came back in the game for a little bit in the fourth, but did not need to exert himself much, and he got to sit back down before the game ended and got a few more minutes of rest, which is big, considering the Warriors have a back-to-back coming up. They are traveling to New York tonight to take on the Knicks at Madison Square Garden tomorrow. Always a big game at the Garden. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on in the show. But this game was decided, oddly enough. I mean, the Warriors were good with Stephen Curry on the court, as they always are. In Steph's 30 minutes tonight, the Warriors outscored the Hornets by 13. But where this game was decided was once Steph went to the bench late in the third quarter. Okay, so let's run through what happened here. And welcome into Warriors Wrap-Up. Mark Grandy with you, 888-957-9570. Join the conversation by giving me a call, by shooting me a text. I see the 925 on our text line, the 650 as well. And I got my eyes on our YouTube chat, powered by First NorCal Credit Union, youtube.com/957thegame. Pierce tuning in, Empire, and my fams. I'm sure the chat will continue to trickle in as we continue. Welcome in, everybody. So this game turned when Stephen Curry checked out with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the third quarter. And, I mean, honestly, normally the game does change. It only does turn in those moments. It just, for Warrior fans, when I say the game changed and it turned when Steph checked out, it's normally because it changes and it turns in a bad way. But this time, it changed and it turned in a good way. And it came from the 3 guys the Warriors had desperately been looking to get some offensive contributions from. Steph checks out with 2:30 left in the third quarter. Warriors only up 3, 75-72. They had led by generally anywhere from like 8 to 15 for the majority of the basketball game. Charlotte had cut it to 3. And by the way, they cut it to 3 with an incredibly weird 7-point possession. They got back within 4, and they ultimately got back within 3, but they were down 11. Let me just rewind for a second. This was a really, really weird third quarter. The Hornets got the basketball down 11, 75-64 with 3:20 left in the third. LaMelo hit a 3. While his 3 was in the air, Draymond called for a foul as he was trying to box out. He then got a technical for arguing that foul call. Then the officials reviewed the foul call, and they called him for a flagrant 1. They upgraded it from a regular foul to a flagrant 1 because as he was boxing out, his hand caught a Hornet in the neck, which there was no ill intent there, but the NBA is putting an emphasis on contact in the head or neck area, so they call that a flagrant, which means the Hornets had 2 free throws to make 1. They do that, and they get the ball back as a result. They also had a chance for the technical free throw, and they make another three-pointer, LaMelo does. So a 7-point possession for the Hornets turns an 11-point deficit for Charlotte into just a 4-point deficit. They would eventually get back within 3 at 75-72, and that's when Steph checks out. And I'm sure most of you out there were thinking the same thing, because this is exactly how I felt watching this game live here in our studios in downtown San Francisco. Oh, Charlotte has all the momentum, and now Steph is checking out. And up to that point, the Warriors in the first half, with Steph and Curry off the floor, with Steph on the bench, the Warriors were outscored by 8 points. And you're thinking, oh, here we go again. Steph going to check out, and this is where the Hornets make their run. The issue was they had already made their run, and you're feeling like if there's another run coming for the Hornets, they're going to take the lead. But what happens instead? The 3 Warriors that I think we all were begging to get something from offensively, specifically this game, but for a couple of these guys that extends for the entire road trip, they all came through at once. So Steph checks out, 2.5 left in the third at 75-72 Warriors. The Dubs then outscore the Hornets 28-12 over the next 8 minutes and 10 seconds of basketball, all of which Steph was on the bench for, to give the Warriors a 103-84 lead. And during that stretch, again, over 8 minutes and 10 seconds of basketball, spanning the third and fourth quarters, the Warriors outscored Charlotte 28-12. All 28 of those points came from Buddy Hield, Brandon Podziemski, and Jimmy Butler. Buddy Hield, 4 threes. He had 12 of the Warriors' 28 points during that stretch. Brandon Podziemski, 3 threes. He had 9 of the Warriors' 28 points during that stretch. And then Jimmy Butler cleaned up with the other 7 points of those 28. He made a 3, his second as a Warrior. He also got to the line 4 times and made all 4. 28-12 Warriors, plus 16, turning a 3-point lead into a 19-point lead, all while Steph rested. And it was all, at least offensively, through Buddy Hield, 12 points, Brandon Podziemski, 9 points, Jimmy Butler, 7 points. I feel like that stretch of basketball specifically, it shows not only the importance of Jimmy Butler. We know that. We've seen that. We even saw it on Saturday when he did not play, because the Warriors looked like an entirely different basketball team. Like, we know Jimmy Butler's impact. But where the Warriors reach another level, and honestly, we can be honest about it, maybe where the Warriors need to be in order to be the team that we think can make noise in the postseason, they need consistent scoring from elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily matter where it's going to come from, but you need others to be able to score double figures for you. And they got that from Buddy Hield. They got that from Brandon Podziemski, and they got that from Jimmy Butler. Again, you know Jimmy Butler's impact, even when he's not scoring. It's similar to Podziemski as well. But if Moses Moody isn't going to be a consistent scorer for you, and he's been a lot better of late, but only 5 points tonight, and by the way, his 5 points came in the first 6 minutes of this basketball game, and he didn't score the rest of the game. It's not necessarily a knock on Moses Moody. I'm just throwing his name out there because the Warriors need some other consistent scorers besides Steph and Curry, and we haven't really seen the best offensive version of Jimmy Butler yet. Draymond Green, by the way, has now scored 10 or more in 5 consecutive games. He's been a little more consistent scoring the basketball, but if the Warriors are going to be the team that not just is looked at as a team that maybe scares potential Western Conference opponents, but as a team that can legitimately win postseason series, like multiple series, they need the scoring from elsewhere. And they're not going to be able to go to the Western Conference Finals if Buddy Hield goes 1 for 7 every night from downtown, if Podziemski can't hit an open 3. It's relatively simple, but I think tonight solidifies that, because you're going up against a really, really bad Charlotte team. And we can just be brutally honest there. Even with LaMelo playing as he was tonight, he did not last week when the Warriors dominated the Hornets at home here at Chase Center. Obviously, that's a different team, and they're better with LaMelo than without, but this is still a really, really bad basketball team. The Hornets are now 14-46. Okay, we don't need to make any excuses for them. And this was a Warrior team today that struggled to put them away. This was a Warrior team that struggled to put the Hornets away. Again, Steph checked out with 2.5 to go in the third. Warriors only up 3. If you didn't have Buddy Hield catch fire and make 4 threes over the span of like 6 minutes of basketball, if Podziemski didn't make 3 threes, if Jimmy Butler didn't make a 3 and didn't get to the free throw line a couple of times, when Steph would have checked in, which, by the way, might have been a whole lot earlier if it was going poorly. In fact, I'm pretty sure it would have been. Steph might have checked in with a deficit with the Warriors behind. Instead, the Warriors had built the lead all the way up to 19 at one point. He checked in when the lead was 17, and at that point, you feel pretty good that you're going to close that one out. And they ultimately did. Again, the final score, 119-101. But, yeah, I mean, Steph was still good in this basketball game. I'm not saying otherwise. He had 21 points. He had 10 assists. He had 9 assists at halftime, by the way. He had a season-high 13 assists on Saturday in Philadelphia. Another double-double for Steph, 21 and 10. Wasn't terribly efficient, although not a lot of Warriors were. I mean, in the starting lineup, you had Steph, 6 for 14, Draymond, 6 for 15, Podziemski, 6 for 16. Really only Buddy Hield and Gary Payton were efficient from the field in this one for the Warriors. Hield was 8 for 14, 5 for 9 from deep, and GP2 was 4 for 7. And the other thing that happened in this basketball game was the Warriors had a few injury scares. Steph rolled his ankle in the first half. It was late, relatively late in the second quarter. Stayed in, but was definitely favoring it there for a minute or two. Stayed in and played his normal rotation period in the second half. So it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Although I will say, once you take your shoes off and you get off your foot and you stop moving around, it's generally going to swell up, and now he's got to get on a plane and travel to New York. We'll see what his status is for tomorrow. Of course, we'll keep you updated all day tomorrow here on 95.7 The Game. But you had that. Doesn't seem too serious. You then had Podziemski, who landed awkwardly on a drive and immediately grabbed at his right knee, hobbled off to the locker room, came back to the bench shortly thereafter, did return to the game. So maybe the Warriors dodged a couple of bullets with those two. And then you had GP2, who, defending against LaMelo Ball, had LaMelo's head crash directly into his face, maybe his nose, maybe his forehead area. Looked like he was bleeding. And who knows if that's just maybe a broken nose, or maybe there was just a laceration above his eye, or maybe they're checking him for a concussion. We don't really know just yet. But the Warriors suffered some injury scares. Doesn't seem like any is too serious, specifically the Steph and Podziemski ones, but they also had to deal with that in this basketball game. And they found a way to get a win. And it was really, really encouraging the way in which they got the win, right? Like, the Orlando win is on Thursday of last week, like a hell of a game, and it's one that we're all going to remember for a really long time, right? And it was just Steph's heroics. Without Steph, they lose that game by 30 probably. They needed him to score every single one of those 56 points, because if he doesn't, they lose that game. Even if he scored 52, they probably lose, even though the Warriors won by more than 4. But you know what I'm saying? Like, they needed desperately every single one of those Steph Curry points. That's one way to win a basketball game, and it's more thrilling than what happened tonight. Not arguing that. But what happened tonight is more encouraging, despite the fact that you had to really eke one out against a really bad basketball team, one of the worst basketball teams in the NBA. But the Warriors are still looking for other contributors to show up on a consistent basis and a consistent level. And the Warriors did get that performance from the others tonight. Okay, how about this? And I think this explains exactly what I'm talking about. Through the first 24 minutes of this basketball game, through the first 2 quarters, this felt like a repeat of Saturday in Philadelphia. The Warriors were good with Steph on the floor, a game in which they lose. They were plus 12 when Steph was on the floor, and they were minus 19 when Steph was off the floor, right? They were good with Steph on the court, and they were just pitiful with Steph off the court. And I can go find the exact numbers for you, because it was really, really telling the way that it went down in Philly. Let's see. Here it is. in Philadelphia on Saturday, when Steph played, which was about 3/4 of basketball, the Warriors outscored the Sixers 108-96. When Steph was off the court, the Warriors got outscored by the Sixers 30-11. That's how stark the difference was, Steph on, Steph off. Plus 12 with him on, minus 19 with him off. The difference in this one was for the Warriors. In the first half, it felt the same. In the first half, the Warriors outscored the Hornets by 9 overall. They had a 9-point lead at half. With Steph on the floor, they outscored the Hornets by 17 points. With him off the floor, they got outscored by 8. Like, this was a repeat of Saturday. And Saturday was really disheartening because you didn't get anything from nearly anybody else. You got a decent performance from Quentin Post, but other than that, it was Steph kind of out there by himself is what it felt like at times. GP2 was good as well, but it was mostly the Steph Curry show, and then you just fingers crossed that somebody could make a shot. And what was so discouraging about what happened in the first half tonight was you had Jimmy Butler back, and yet the Steph on, Steph off conversation felt the same as it did on Saturday without Jimmy Butler. In the first half tonight, the Warriors outscored the Hornets by 17 with Steph on the floor. They were outscored by 8 with him off the floor. And that's what led to the 9-point advantage. But it was just greatness with Steph, and it was really bad without. How were they going to be able to counteract that in the second half? And honestly, it got off to a really poor start. Got off to a really poor start. The Warriors were outscored by 6 points when Steph Curry was on the floor to begin that third quarter, right? Over the first 9.5 minutes of the third, the Warriors, with Steph on the floor, got outscored by 6. The 9-point lead shrunk to 3. Then Steph checks out, and you're thinking, oh no, this might be the game right here. You need desperately Buddy or Pajemski or Jimmy or Draymond or anybody to help you score and add to a lead, or at the very least keep you right around a 3-point advantage when Steph checks back in, and then you're just going to rely on Steph heroics to win you the basketball game. And that's kind of what the Warriors' strategy has been at times, but not tonight, because what happened once Steph checked out, the Warriors played their best basketball of the night. They outscored Charlotte 28-12, spanning the third and fourth quarters over about 8 minutes and 10 seconds of basketball. Of those 28 points, all of them, all 28, scored by Buddy Hield, who had 12, Pajemski, who had 9, and Butler, who had 7. And then Steph checked back in with a big lead and was kind of able to take it easy, and he only ends up playing 30 minutes tonight. Do you have the question of the ankle? Sprained his right ankle in the first half, but did not really miss any time. We'll see where that leaves him on the injury report for tomorrow. But ahead of a back-to-back, Steph only having to play 30 minutes in this basketball game, and how many total in the fourth quarter? It was only a few in the fourth quarter. Steph played just 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. That is huge. That is huge for a basketball team who's hoping they could close out maybe a 4-1 road trip. Biggest challenge is tomorrow night in New York. It's the best opponent on this trip by a mile, and it's the most difficult one because it is also a back-to-back. But an impressive win for the Warriors today. I don't really care who the opponent is, and we had a stat here. Let me go back and find it from Pierce Evans. The Hornets 13-25 when LaMelo plays and 1-21 when LaMelo doesn't. I don't have the wherewithal to go and check that myself, Pierce, but I'm going to trust you and appreciate the statistic. You can join the conversation 888-957-9570 and on YouTube at youtube.com/957thegame. No doubt. I mean, Charlotte is a whole lot better with LaMelo. They're still not a very good basketball team. LaMelo scored 25 points tonight, 8 for 21 from the field. He was a volume shooter. It really was Miles Bridges that hurt the Warriors in this game. 35 points, got to the line a lot. It was 11 of 20 from the field and 4 of 9 from downtown. But this is a bad Charlotte team. Healthy or not, bad Charlotte team. The Warriors should be able to handle business. They ultimately do by 18 points. And if you look at the final score, you might kind of think, ho-hum, they won by 18. They covered, by the way, but it wasn't all that easy. It was not all that easy. This was a 3-point game with 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter. The Warriors ultimately earned the win here in this one. And you got to thank some of the others because there was, I don't know how you guys take in these games. I take them in oftentimes keeping an eye on Warriors Twitter. And you can join me on Twitter. You can give me a follow. Shoot me a tweet at Mark Grandy. That's Mark with the C, Grandy with an I at the end. And there was so many people on Warriors Twitter who are saying, oh, my God, Podziemski, you got to make a three. Buddy, you got to make some shots. And they ultimately did. And those guys, I think in addition to what Jimmy Butler did once Steph went out late in the third quarter, reason number one why the Warriors won this basketball game. The 217 chiming in on the text line, and you can, again, join the conversation, 888-957-9570. Buddy balls like a legit sixth man, and the Warriors will come out of the West. It's a lock. I think you're overreacting a bit, 217, but I know your point. If Buddy Hield is able to get you what he did tonight, and Buddy Hield led your team in scoring 22 points, 8 of 14 from the field, 5 for 9 from downtown, you're going to win a lot of basketball games. How about this statistic? And I saw this one on Twitter, courtesy of our guy Bonte Hill, and he's doing a great job hosting the Warriors postgame show on NBC Sports Bay Area. How about this from Buddy Hield? The Warriors are now 12-1 when Hield scores 18 or more points, and 10-0 when he scores 19 or more points. Buddy Hield gets to 19, the Warriors don't lose. So to the 217, that's the statistic that backs it up for you. Now, the playoffs are a different beast, but I think that the point that we can all take away from this is if Buddy Hield is making shots, the Warriors are a darn good basketball team, and it becomes like 5 times more difficult to beat them. It's just been, Buddy Hield has been terribly inconsistent. Now, honestly, if you do, and I'll bring it up here really quick, because these numbers honestly surprised me. Give me a sec as I bring up Buddy Hield's basketball reference page and try to get you a grouping of statistics for Buddy Hield. Let's go all the way back to the 5th of February. So we have about a month worth of basketball. A month worth of basketball with the All-Star break mixed in there. This is prior to tonight. Again, tonight he went 5 for 9 from downtown. So these numbers will take a jump. But in his last 11 games prior to tonight, Buddy Hield, 36% from deep. That's not terrible, but I think it's a whole lot better than we think it is. But we remember the 0 for 6 on Saturday in Philly. We remember the 0 for 4 against Houston just before the All-Star break. We remember 1 for 6 in Dallas in a loss. Oftentimes, we feel like Buddy Hield missing a couple of open shots is what caused a Warriors loss. And you felt that way against Philadelphia on Saturday. And if Buddy Hield is missing those threes in the third and the fourth instead of making them, this might have been a loss. And we might be pointing to that as well. So I think the bottom line is you get Buddy Hield scoring. I mean, it doesn't even have to be 19 or 20. Obviously, when he's scored 19 or more, the Warriors have never lost. But even if it's 15 on a consistent basis, everything is going to be so much easier for the Warriors because there's just a legitimate another shooting threat that they can throw out there. And you get 15 points from that every single night. You don't have to go searching for who's going to be another double-digit scorer for us tonight? Is it going to be Podziemski? Is it going to be Moody? Is it going to be GP2 randomly? Is it going to be Quentin Post? It could be Buddy Hield. And, we've been beating this drum really all season, but if you can get any sort of consistency, the Warriors do take on a whole different feeling going forward if you can get that from Buddy Hield. All right, time for a break here on a Warriors Wrap-Up. Mark Grandy with you. Plenty of time for your calls, your text, and chat on YouTube, 888-957-9570. Also, youtube.com/957thegame. You can join the chat there. We got lots more to get into. Plus, we will hear from Steve Kerr. I know Draymond Green has also spoken post-game. I can let you hear a little bit of that. We got plenty more to get into. The Dubs knock off the Hornets 119-101. They're 5 games over 500. And hey, alone in 6th in the Western Conference. Speaking of the West, I will let you in on a couple of the other scores from around the West. We'll do that when we come back as Warriors Wrap-Up continues. Mark Grandy with you. Dubs win. We're back with more next on 95.7 The Game.
it out, gets it to Buddy Hield. Hield shoots a tough shot from the corner, and Buddy all of a sudden is Buddy buckets. And it's 92-77. The Warriors have their biggest lead of the night.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Yeah, Buddy Hield was great. Warriors probably lose this game without Buddy Hield tonight. That's how good he was, specifically in the second half. Overall, he scores 22 points, which led the way for the Warriors. 8 for 14 from the field, 5 for 9 from downtown. We'll get into more of what happened in this basketball game. There's something specific I want to point out about Steph Curry that I think is meaningful. We'll get to that in a little bit. Plus, we will hear from Steve Kerr. We've also got some Draymond Green that I want to play you, specifically about Brandon Pajemski, that I think is worthwhile for you to listen to. We'll get to all of that coming up here in a little bit, but I promised I will look around the Western Conference, because with the win tonight, again, final score 119-101 over the Hornets, the Dubs are alone in 6th in the Western Conference right now, and they have gained on the two teams directly ahead of them, because both Memphis and Houston have lost. Houston lost to OKC, not terribly surprising. The final score in that one, 137-128. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's probably going to win MVP, 51 points. Seems like he drops 50 points like once a week now. The last couple of months, he has been that good. So not surprising there. Houston loses to OKC, 137-128. So Houston loses, the Warriors win. The Dubs move up to 6th, and they gain a game on Houston, who has fallen all the way down to 5th. The Warriors now only 4 games behind the Rockets for 5th. Houston 37-24, the Warriors 33-28, but there's more, because Memphis in action, they were taking on the Atlanta Hawks, who are fighting for, they're relatively safe in a play-in spot, but they're not going to do anything more than that in the Eastern Conference. But they were coming into tonight 27-33, a little bit below average basketball team, by no means terrible, but also not great. Memphis was, let me go back through the play-by-play here. Memphis was ahead 128-121 with 4 minutes to go in regulation. This was at about the point that I took the air here on our post-game show, and I have the game up over my left shoulder, so I can't see it actively when I'm looking at you guys here on the camera for our YouTube and Twitch audience. But I saw that score and that time left, and I figured, well, Memphis is probably going to win. That's too bad. Warriors might be rooting for the Hawks in this one. And then when I hit our commercial break, I take a look at the scores, and I see Atlanta won 132-130. So the Hawks close in the final 4 minutes on an 11-2 run, and they upset the Grizzlies, and it was a painfully bad ending for Memphis. They had the ball in a tie basketball game, and Desmond Bane got the ball stripped by Dyson Daniels. It leads to a Karis LeVert game winner at the buzzer, and the Hawks win 132-130. What a turn of events in that one in Memphis. The Hawks win, and the Grizzlies have lost. They now fall to 38-27, and 38-23, and the Grizz, they are tumbling down the Western Conference standings. They now lost 3 in a row. They're 3-7 in their last 10, and they are plummeting right now, down to 4th. They were as high as 2 just like the other day. By the way, the Lakers, they have climbed all the way up to number 2, percentage points ahead of the Nuggets. The Lakers right now are the 2 seed in the Western Conference. The Nuggets, the 3. The Grizzlies have fallen to 4. The Rockets have fallen to 5. The Warriors are 6. This now becomes really interesting. This becomes really interesting for the Warriors, because I think, for the most part, I think most of us feel the 6th seed is the most likely spot for the Warriors, assuming that they stay healthy. And if they're not healthy when the postseason comes around, it doesn't really matter. Let's just assume health. I feel like the 6 is most likely. I would trust the Warriors over the Clippers and the T-Wolves, the Kings and the Mavericks at this point, assuming health. Just to make it easier, let's assume health. I think the Warriors might be the favorite for the 6th seed. In fact, I think they, not might be, I think they are. They are the favorite for the 6th seed. If you're the 6th seed, though, it's looking increasingly likely like that means either Denver or Los Angeles, either the Nuggets or the Lakers in the first round. because the Grizzlies are tumbling, the Rockets are tumbling, which kind of means by default it would have to be Lakers Nuggets in some order at 2 or 3. And those are probably the two teams the Warriors want to avoid more than anything else. OKC is OKC, and you're not going to get OKC unless you're in the play-in. I don't think that's going to happen. So, of the realistic possibilities for the Warriors at the 6, the two worst options are the Lakers and the Nuggets. So what that means is the Warriors, they need to desperately climb to 5 because the only other way to do it is if you trust Memphis or Houston to win basketball games. So honestly, maybe it would have been best for the Grizzlies to hold on. Maybe it would have been in the Warriors' interest for the Grizzlies to hold on to make it more likely that they could claim the 3 and they would either push maybe the Lakers or the Nuggets down to 4. Regardless, you want to avoid the Lakers. You want to avoid the Nuggets. You would much rather play either the Grizzlies or the Rockets in the first round, which means you either need one of Memphis or Houston to play good down the stretch so they can be the 3, or you need to catch one of them so you can be the 5 and you take on whichever one of those teams is the 4. So you're kind of rooting for separate things. Maybe you want one of Memphis or Houston to play great and the other to really struggle. So one could move up to 3 and you have a shot to get the other one in the 4-5 matchup. But you might get to a point where those two teams struggle enough to fall behind and stay behind the Lakers and the Nuggets, but not struggle enough to where you can't catch them for the 5 seed, and then you're forced to play either the Lakers or the Nuggets in the first round. So you kind of have to middle this because you don't want to just root endlessly for Memphis and Houston to lose, because then you're decreasing your odds of getting one of them in the potential 3 versus 6 matchup. But it's interesting the way the Western Conference is going to play out, and I know that I'm assuming a lot here because this is, again, assuming the Warriors are not a play-in team, but really, I trust the Warriors over the Clippers. The Clippers have a rough schedule coming up. They've got some injury issues as well. The Timberwolves are one of the hardest teams to figure out in the league. The Kings are playing suddenly a whole lot better, and the other Western Conference matchup of any kind of import to the Warriors tonight is Sacramento. They're in Dallas, and they have absolutely blown the doors off of the Mavericks. Now, to be fair, the Mavericks did lose Kyrie Irving in the first half of this basketball game. Don't know how serious it is, but he was pretty quickly ruled out, and it did not look great, the replay that I saw. If that's the case, the Mavericks are done, but the Kings are on the Warriors' heels as well. If the Kings win, there will be a 3-way tie for the 7, 8, 9 spots in the West. And by the way, I say if they win, they're up by 20 right now with 2 minutes to go. That game's over. The Kings, the Clippers, and the T-Wolves will all be a half game behind the Warriors for the 6th seed. So me just assuming the Warriors will be the 6, it's a pretty big assumption, but I do think I trust a healthy Warriors team more than I trust the Clippers, the T-Wolves, or the Kings. But the big if there is health, because as we saw tonight and on Saturday, if the Warriors are not fully healthy, it's a struggle at times. They lose to a team that had previously lost 9 consecutive games in the 76ers on Saturday without Jimmy Butler. And then tonight, they have injury scares to Steph, to Podziemski, and to GP2. And you're kind of just left wondering, well, what are the odds that this team can stay healthy the rest of the season? If they're healthy, they're no doubt a top 6 team in the Western Conference. They're probably more like a top 4 team in the Western Conference if they're healthy. But if they're not healthy, as we've already seen, there's a real big question mark as to exactly what this team can accomplish. But yeah, interesting in the West, because you might want Memphis to start figuring things out so that they can get back up to the 3, but you might want the chance to catch either Memphis or Houston, and for that, you need them to lose basketball games. Right now, they've both been losing basketball games. Houston has lost 2 in a row. They're 5-5 in their last 10. The Grizzlies have lost 3 in a row. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Just over the course of the last 10 games for either of those teams, the Warriors have gained 5 games on Memphis and 3 games on Houston. The Warriors 8-2 in their last 10. That is the Jimmy Butler era. 8-2 since Jimmy Butler debuted. By the way, 8-1 when Jimmy plays, but 8-2 since Jimmy debuted. Houston during the same stretch, 5-5. Memphis during the same stretch, 3-7. Warriors now 4 games behind Houston, 5 games behind Memphis. But that just shows you, even when your team is elite, playing great basketball, 8-2, and when another team is 3-7 in that stretch, I mean, 5 games is a big difference over the course of a 10-game sample. To gain 5 games on a team, that's a gigantic jump there. But just to put it in the picture, these teams have about 20 games left, 21, 22, depending on how many games you played currently. But right around there, you would have to have, another stretch like that for either Memphis or Houston, and another stretch like the Warriors have currently had in order to catch them. So it's going to be difficult, but if those teams keep losing basketball games, you're going to have a shot to do that, no doubt, as long as you keep winning as well. All right, 888-957-9570. You can join the conversation by giving me a call, shooting me a text. Again, 888-957-9570. Plus, I got my eyes on our YouTube chat, youtube.com/957thegame. I got a couple of questions on here about the Clippers. The Clippers do not play tonight. The Clippers are off tonight. Let me bring up the Clippers schedule here for you in just one second. The Clippers, they had just played the Lakers a couple of times, but they are off tonight. Sorry, I'm having a hard time bringing up this Clippers schedule. Give me 1 second here. The Clippers have not played in just a little bit. Warriors played the Clippers early this year. Here it is. Warriors, Clippers. Obviously, the Clippers have the tiebreaker over the Warriors right now. The Clippers next play tomorrow. They're in Phoenix. Clippers in Phoenix against Kevin Durant. It's a 7 o'clock tip-off. I would imagine, I know for sure the Warriors will be rooting for KD and the Suns in that one. After they're in Phoenix tomorrow, they have Detroit at home on Wednesday, so a back-to-back on the road, then at home against Detroit. Then they have New York, the Knicks. Then they have the Kings. Then they go on the road for New Orleans, Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, Cleveland, Memphis, OKC. The Knicks again. They got Cleveland again. So they have 2 games coming up against the Knicks, 2 games coming up against Cleveland. They got OKC. They've got a couple of Dallases on the way. They've got some tough games. And by the way, last game of the regular season is in Golden State. Clippers here at Chase Center, April 13th. Final game of the regular season. Ultimately, that might be a decider in a seeding battle in the Western Conference. But no Clippers action today. They have lost 5 of their last 6, including their last 2, both to the Lakers. They're in Phoenix tomorrow. Warriors fans should be rooting for the Suns, although as pointed out here by someone here on our YouTube chat, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, youtube.com/957thegame. You cannot count on Phoenix. They're not good enough. Yeah, no doubt. Phoenix is a dumpster fire right now, and I've essentially eliminated them from any involvement in the postseason. They're 4 games behind the Mavericks, now 3.5 as the Mavericks finally lose to the Kings officially in Dallas today. They're done. They're not making this play-in tournament. The Suns have quit on themselves. They're 2-8 in their last 10. That team is done. So I wouldn't count on the Clippers losing tomorrow, but you never know. KD could catch fire and go for 40, and he could single-handedly beat the Clippers in that one. We shall see. We'll keep an eye on that tomorrow here on Warriors Wrap-Up as we run this back for the second consecutive day after the Warriors take on the Knicks at MSG tomorrow. Okay, we'll keep an eye on the Western Conference standings, but let's hear from Steve Kerr right now. Steve Kerr addressing the media post-game in Charlotte after his team's 119-101 win. The Warriors 33-28, as we just mentioned, now alone in 6th in the Western Conference. If the season were to end at this very instant, it would be Dubs Nuggets in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. That would be fun, but I think that's a little frightening if you're the Warriors, because the Nuggets tend to have the Warriors' number. All right, let's go to Steve Kerr. You can line your calls up, 888-957-9570. But right now, Steve Kerr post-game after his team's win in Charlotte. Here is the Warriors head coach.
About the game tonight?
I like the way we responded in the late third, early fourth. We didn't have much rhythm to the game for most of the night, and we finally broke through. And wasn't pretty, but we did what we had to do, and important win, and now we move on.
Move to 6th, obviously a long way to go, but how significant is it that you set the goal of 6 and then get there relatively quickly?
Yeah, it's fantastic, but obviously everybody's bunched together, 5 teams within a game of each other or so, so we can't can't take too much time to celebrate. We got another game tomorrow, and we could very easily find ourselves in ninth tomorrow. I don't know. So we just got to keep going.
How much different are you offensively when Buddy's hitting threes like that off the bench? Podziemski hit, I think, 4 or 5.
Well, I mean, it's really huge deal for us when we get Moses, Buddy, BP. When those guys are knocking down threes, it really does change everything. Other teams try to do everything to take Steph away. They were top locking him the entire night tonight, then playing off of Gary, Draymond, Loon. We need other guys to just step up and knock down some shots. I thought Buddy was his second half was fantastic.
Can you just talk to Steph and Jimmy's fit thus far in the games that Jimmy has played? This morning when Steph was asked at shoot around about it, he said they're polar opposites, and that's what helps them.
Yeah.
That's what works. Can you just discuss what you've seen as you implement it?
I think they complement each other really well. Jimmy's a phenomenal all-around basketball player, two-way player. He's at his best when the ball is moving. I think we can do a better job of getting him involved by not letting the ball stick early in possessions. If he can get it on the backside of a possession, after it's moved 3 or 4 times, he's unstoppable on that drive, and he creates so much for his teammates. I thought the first half it was catch and hold. He wasn't engaged. He wasn't involved, and that's on us as a team. We have to play with ball movement and flow and rhythm, and so it's still a work in progress. But I love Jimmy's fit here. I think he's perfect next to Steph and Dre, and it's showing. Obviously, I think we're 8-1 since we got him with him in the lineup. That's not by accident.
All right, there's Steve Kerr postgame earlier tonight in Charlotte talking about his Warriors' 119-101 win over the Hornets. Warriors now 5 games over 500. Again, they were 5 games over after the win in Orlando. They suffered that loss in Philadelphia on Saturday. Get back to 5 games over, as you heard Steve Kerr just mentioned. Now in games in which Jimmy Butler plays, they're 8-1. You add in that loss to Philly when Jimmy Butler did not play. They're 8-2 in the Jimmy Butler era since he debuted. That's their last 10 games. 8-2 is the stretch for the Warriors. And hey, if you just go 8-2 over your next two stretches of 10 games, you close the season 16-4. You're probably going to be the 5 seed if you do that. The way that the Rockets and Grizzlies are playing ahead of you, but Warriors can only can play the games that they are scheduled to play, and we'll see how it plays out with the Grizzlies and the Rockets. What is important to note, by the way. The Warriors have the tiebreakers currently over both the Grizzlies and the Rockets, and they have clinched the tiebreaker over the Rockets officially. Let me confirm if they have it already over Memphis. I know they're 2-1 against Memphis, but they probably have one more game coming up. Yes, they do. Warriors are 2-1 against Memphis. One more game against Memphis. It is in Memphis on April 1st. If the Warriors win that game, they would also clinch the tiebreaker there. If they lose that game, it would go to the next step down on the tie-breaking criteria. But the Warriors have the tiebreaker over Houston already. Even if they lose the final matchup to Houston, they already have that tiebreaker. And if they beat Memphis in Memphis April 1st, they'll have the tiebreaker there as well. But, I mean, Steve Kerr hit on, I think, what's the story of this basketball game and what's the story of this basketball team, which is, quote, Steve Kerr says, it's a huge deal for us when Moses, Buddy, and BP being Brandon Podziemski, hit threes for us. And that's what turned this game around. Maybe less so about Moses today, but that's true in general. When Moses is scoring 15 points a game, the Warriors become a whole lot more difficult to beat. But specifically for Buddy and for Podziemski, and you can even throw Jimmy Butler in there, who hadn't really done anything offensively through the first 2.5 quarters of this basketball game. It was Buddy, Podziemski, and Jimmy Butler, who scored all 28 points for the Warriors over a span of 8 minutes and 10 seconds. That turned a 3-point Warrior lead into a 19-point Warrior lead, all with Steph on the bench. Hield made 4 threes. Podziemski made 3 threes. Butler made 1 and got to the free throw line 4 times, made all 4 of them. Add all those numbers up, 28 points for those three alone when the Warriors went on a 28-12 run spanning the third and fourth quarters, all while Steph rested on the bench. Huge turnaround there for the Warriors in that one. All right, 888-957-9570. I also wanted to focus on something I've noticed from Steph, and I think we've seen this almost from the minute that the trade for Jimmy Butler happened. And in fact, give me a sec as I bring up some statistics here because they are pretty impressive for Steph Curry. This will not include tonight unless Basketball Reference updates this quick, although I don't think they will. Stephen Curry in the Jimmy Butler era, right, which begins in Chicago. In fact, we could even go back to the Utah game because that was when the trade happened. And I think you could sense a different Steph. In Steph's previous 11 games before tonight, and you can tack on 21 points and 10 assists to this tonight. In his previous 11 games, though, Steph averaging 31 points per game, 47% from the field, closer to 48, 47.7% from the field, 40% from downtown, 4 rebounds and 6 assists, 31 points per game, 48 from the field, 40% from deep, since Jimmy Butler was traded here. I don't know if you guys can sense it, but I sense a feisty Steph. I sense a rejuvenated Steph. And I sense a Steph that feels like there's a legitimate possibility that he and this team are playing meaningful basketball once again in April, because they haven't had that in a bit now. This feels like a Steph with a different kind of hunger and a different kind of drive that we haven't really had in recently. We didn't have it really last year, maybe at times beginning of the year, but you get into March and April and it's kind of a different beast. Like you can't even fake that kind of hunger and that kind of fire once earlier in the season like you get at this point. And there was a couple of moments in this one where I think you could see it. And it's just kind of on random moments where you see his competitiveness come through and burst through the screen if you're just watching at home or even if you're at Chase Center and you can see it there as well. There was one moment here in this basketball game, and it was in the first quarter. Mark Williams, the center for Charlotte, who was, of course, in the trade that sent him to the Lakers, and it was rescinded because apparently he failed his physical, although he's played ever since then, and he seems to be fine. Whatever. Mark Williams, big man for the Hornets. In the first quarter, he'd been contesting Warrior shots, specifically jump shots where he was switched out onto Steph or switched out onto Pods or whoever it was. He would contest shots. And he's like a 7-footer, right? So instead of trying to block a shot, he would just clap his hands. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see what I'm doing. He claps his hands high above his head as the Warriors are shooting the ball. It happened with Draymond on a Draymond 3 at one point. He's just trying to distract you, right? You clap loudly right next to you. Maybe it throws off your shot. That was his strategy for whatever reason. I don't really know why. Some players do it. He was doing it like 3 or 4 times in that first quarter. And then later on, Draymond breaks down the defense, draws Mark Williams to him, passes it off to a cutting Steph coming from the right baseline, and Steph gets the shot, a little push shot over the top of the shot blocker, Mark Williams, and it goes in. And Steph, in response to what Mark Williams had been doing, gets right up in his face, turns and stands right in front of him, and sarcastically claps right in front of his face and kind of holds it for a second and just looks at him and then runs back down the court. Like, that's just Steph being Steph, but I feel like we haven't really seen that stuff from him a lot lately. That's feisty Steph. That's Steph who feels like there's something worth fighting for right now, who's feeling really good about his game, and who's having some fun with it. You've seen it in other times as well. In fact, there was another moment in this basketball game late in the second quarter. Steph throws the lob to Buddy Hield from like the 3-point line. Buddy Hield in the fast break. Buddy Hield finishes it with a nice finger roll, and Steph, he lets out a scream and a yell, and he just holds the pose as he's screaming for a couple of seconds. Like, we haven't seen that sort of energy and that enthusiasm and that feeling from Steph in a bit. And I think you can really, really feel that he has picked up on the fact that since the Jimmy Butler acquisition, he has a direct path to playing meaningful basketball once again in April and maybe into May and hell, maybe into June. Who the hell knows? But I have definitely noticed a different kind of energy from Steph. And it's not just like those celebration moments, right? Like where maybe you're poking fun at an opponent like that, which is what Steph did to Mark Williams, clapping in his face like that. But it's also just the way in which he's playing and hunting of his own shots. The Orlando game is a prime example. Hadn't even scored 40 points in a game this year and then scores 56 in that one. This is a different Steph right now. And I think it's worth pointing out because the Warriors are going to need that. And obviously the Warriors have always only ever gone as Steph goes. And if they're going to make any sort of noise in the postseason this year, they're going to need Steph at his best. And Steph, 21 points tonight. It wasn't a crazy game, but the defense was trying to let others beat them and try to not let Steph beat them. And Steph had 9 assists in the first half as a result. I think we're seeing a different Steph right now, and it's worth pointing out. You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, an Odyssey sports station, always live on the free Odyssey app. Twitch and YouTube powered by First NorCal Credit Union. For a low-rate auto loan, apply online or just ask for First NorCal financing at the dealer. Let's hear a little bit from Draymond Green. I promised this earlier. Draymond Green talking about Brandon Podziemski, and I got a little 2-part cut here. This was prepared for me by the great Chris O'Connell. Shout out to Chris, who's probably in his car right now driving home. Appreciate you, Chris. Draymond on Podziemski getting down on himself. Here's Draymond talking about the Warriors' second-year guard.
I think one thing we're always preaching to him is just be decisive. We believe he's a really good shooter, a really good basketball player, can be for a long time in this league, but he gets down on himself quite a bit. And, just want him to always understand that, hey, we all have belief in you, but also that belief can't exceed the belief that you have in yourself. Responding to every shot, it's a long journey, man. You can't ride that roller coaster, and so just, relaying that to him, like, man, we believe.
There's Draymond on Podziemski. That feels like eerily similar to something that Draymond said about Podziemski early this season when he was really going through some shooting struggles. And by the way, Podziemski is kind of going through some shooting struggles right now, which was why what happened late third, early fourth for Podziemski was so impressive. By the way, Podziemski, I have it here. Let me find the statistic for you. Podziemski, where is it? Podziemski's statistics. Here it is. Podziemski tonight, obviously, 6 for 16, 4 of 11 from downtown. The shooting from deep, specifically, a lot better. A lot of that was in the second half. He was 1 for 4 in the first half, 3 for 7 in the second half. But in his 10 games prior to tonight, Podziemski only 41% from the field and 26% from downtown over his previous 10. A little bit of a shooting slump, and we've also noticed that he's a completely different shooter home versus road. I can go back and find those numbers for you as well. Give me 1 second here. Podziemski at home, 41% from deep. On the road, 24% from deep. And there's been a decent amount of road games lately, which explains Podziemski shooting 26% from downtown over his prior 10 games before tonight. But that's very similar to what Draymond Green said to the media, but I would imagine also what he said to Draymond when he was going through those struggles to begin the season. And the shooting struggles kind of have popped back up of late. But Draymond essentially saying you cannot, get up on every make and get down on every miss. That is a terrible way to live your life as a basketball player, and you're only going to hurt yourself. But let's hear what Draymond Green had to say next, because Podziemski did kind of turn this thing around in the second half where he was 3 for 7 from downtown, made 3 in a span of like 5 minutes at the end of the third and beginning of the fourth quarter. So here's Draymond Green talking about Podziemski even more.
He had a tough game last game, and I told him I think it was because, you had one tough game in the last 10, 11, been playing great. And I think you had a tough game last game, and you're starting this game off having a tough game is because you're second-guessing everything. So Steve got at him a little bit last game. You can't allow that to make you second-guess yourself more. Let that charge you forward. Let that turn you up more. Let that make you be more decisive, because ultimately that's what Steve's doing it for. Like, BP, you holding the ball too long. Only time he know how to make every play. The only time he hold the ball too long is when you get in your head and you start overthinking. Just let him know about that. Don't overthink anything. Everybody over here have the utmost belief in you.
That's Draymond Green, and I think he's 100% right. And Podziemski having Draymond Green in the locker room is great for him because Draymond is a guy who Podziemski, as a basketball player, can relate to, right? They both do a lot of the other stuff. They both do a lot of the dirty work. They both do a lot of the things that don't necessarily show up in the normal box score categories. But then you look over at the plus minus and you see, whoa, Draymond led the team in plus minus again tonight. What is he doing? Podziemski, it's a very similar story. So they're similar basketball players. And they're not the most gifted scorers, right? Draymond, for the majority of Draymond's career, he has been on the court left open. It happened tonight. The Hornets were not guarding Draymond. So Draymond's misses are generally always wide open misses. And every once in a while, he'll have an air ball. And if Draymond is thinking about his past air ball or that he's 0 for 6 from his last 6 from downtown, like that's only going to hurt your next one. And I'm sure at times Draymond has had those experiences. So it's really good for Podziemski to have someone like Draymond in the locker room that can kind of help him talk through those sorts of things. Because Podziemski is the kind of guy who, when things are going poorly, you can kind of, I think, see it play out on the court in his decisions, in maybe second-guessing himself, as Draymond said, and not making those decisions as quickly. And I think we saw one moment of this, by the way. We saw it in the second quarter. And when I noticed this, it is, I'll put it this way. When you see Podziemski make a bad decision, you almost feel like it's because of the fact that he's not shooting the basketball well. He lets a rough shooting stretch kind of impact the decisions that he's making. And that's what happened early in this basketball season and why he was so difficult to play early, because he wasn't making his shots, and as a result of not making his shots, he was letting it take away from all the other things that he does well on the offensive end specifically. And there was a moment here in the first half where I think we saw that. He had the ball, Podziemski did, on the left wing. He had Steph Curry in the left corner, right? So they're on the same half of the court. Podziemski left wing, Curry left corner. A defender is running at him as he gets the ball, and he's a little bit open. So the defender has to close out really aggressively at him, and he gives him a little pump fake. Smart move. He does the Curry pump fake flyby, right? He does that. The defender flies past him. He now has an open look at a three. Steph's defender begins to close on him, leaves Steph, and comes over to close out again on Podziemski. And Podziemski, instead of waiting to draw the defense and then to kick to a wide open Steph in the corner, by the way, he takes a shot as the contest comes. So not only does he not take the shot quick enough to make it an open three, not only does he not wait for the defense to commit and then pass it, he waits for the defense to commit and then he shoots it. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. It's one thing to take the open three. It's another to take a contested three when Steph is wide open in the corner. We talk about Steph open threes, the best look you could ever dream of. A Steph open corner three. Oh my God. That is the best shot in basketball. Maybe that has ever existed in basketball. Maybe other than a Kareem skyhook. A Steph open corner three, considering the extra point you get, again, from shooting from downtown, efficiency-wise, there might not be anything better in the history of this game than an open Steph corner three. And Podziemski decided, no, I'm going to take the contested left wing three instead of passing to Steph. That is a no-no. And by the way, I guarantee you Steve Kerr is going to circle that play and show it to Podziemski, maybe on the plane tonight or at shoot-around tomorrow, because that is the same exact kind of play that got Kuminga in trouble this year. You remember in Minnesota when Kuminga took a contested mid-range jumper early in the shot clock when he had Steph on the right wing. Steve Kerr, I think, immediately called timeout, and you could feel his frustration through the TV. And then post-game, in the post-game presser, he essentially called out Kuminga, and he didn't name him. He was specifically talking about Podziemski and Kuminga, but this specific instance was about Kuminga. You can't be taking mid-range, early shot clock jumpers when we got Steph on the floor. Work to get Steph a look, the mid-range will be open late in the shot clock. We can get that at any point we want. Like, that's what got Kuminga in trouble early this year and why he was playing so much better before he got hurt, because he had fixed that. That's the kind of play that Steve Kerr absolutely hates, by the way. And it was one that Podziemski made. And again, I think we can point when we see those kind of Podziemski mistakes, because he normally is a smart basketball player. He normally is making the right decisions. When he is not, I think more often than not, it's because of his shot is struggling, and it kind of causes him to second guess himself. And I think that's a really good example of that. I think what else when we're on this topic of good, smart basketball decisions, we got to point out Quentin Post, by the way. Quentin Post was, he wasn't anything incredibly special in this one. He had just 6 points, 2 for 3 from downtown, 2 for 6 from the field, so he was 0 for 3 inside the arc. But he scored all 6 of those points in like a mini heater run that he had in the second quarter. And I thought this highlights exactly what I'm talking about with a player making the right, smart decision, right? So we have Podziemski on one hand shooting a contested 3 instead of passing to an open Steph. For Quentin Post, like, the returns are still relatively, like, it's early returns, small sample size for the most part. And obviously, I trust him as a 3-point shooter. Like, he's legitimately a very good NBA shooter. We know that. But in terms of passing, making the right decisions, ball is in your hand, make the decision in the split second, either to pass, to shoot, to dribble, or to do whatever, like, that's still small sample. And I don't know exactly what to trust yet. But there was a moment in this second quarter where, Quentin Post, oh my God, he had to make Steve Kerr so happy in this moment. He had hit a 3, and you kind of know how Quentin Post works. We've watched him enough now. He hits a 3, like, he's immediately hot. Like, he hits a 3, and he's bound to make 2 or 3 in a span of, like, 45 seconds. Like, that's the kind of player Post is. He hit a 3, and it was his first made field goal of the game. And you're thinking, oh, don't let QP get hot, right? Don't let him get hot. He has been the reason the Warriors have built big leads recently. So he hits 1, and you kind of feel like he's in the middle of something maybe here. Next possession, he has the ball in the right corner, and he's kind of open, but there's a contest coming, and he lets the contest come to him. He draws the defense, and instead of either, trying to pump fake or fly by or drive or maybe rush his shot, because he was open for a split second, but he doesn't have the quickest release. Instead of trying any of that, which would have been maybe ill-advised, he instead waits patiently, draws the defense, and then passes to the right wing where Buddy Hield is wide open. Post, kind of in the middle of a little heater that he's on, doesn't rush his shot, instead has the wherewithal to wait, draw the defense, and then make a picture-perfect pass to Buddy Hield. It's an easy pass, but still on the money to Buddy Hield in rhythm, who takes and makes a wide-open right wing 3. And then suddenly the Warriors are running, right? A Post 3, a Hield 3. They get a stop. They come back the other way, and then Post hits another 3 right after that. And suddenly it's like 9 points in the span of a minute for the Warriors, all because of Quentin Post, who made 2 threes and then made the right decision with the ball in his hands on the next one. Like, that is the decision-making that Podziemski normally is very good at. That is the decision-making that Steve Kerr absolutely loves. And I think that's a moment worth highlighting, because I think it's big for Quentin Post if he's going to continue to get major minutes, as I think he will, as he's, the first oftentimes center off the bench for the Warriors. Sometimes it's Looney, sometimes it's Post. He's going to continue to get major minutes. And if he can consistently make those sorts of decisions, like, we know he's going to shoot near 40% from deep. That feels like rock solid. Maybe it dips to 37, right? But you'll still take that from a bench big. Is he going to make the right decisions with the ball in his hands? And it feels like he is. That was one example of it. So I thought that was really important to single out in this basketball game, what Quentin Post did in that moment. 888-957-9570. Plenty more to get into here on Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game. Mark Grandy with you. Let's get to crashing the boards right now, though, before we get on out of here. Crashing the Boards is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. This one's got to go to Draymond Green. Draymond Green led the Warriors with 12 rebounds tonight. Another double-double for Draymond Green, by the way. Also, he's now scored in double figures in 5 consecutive games. Draymond Green was very good in this game. He had 16 points, those 12 rebounds, again, which is why he gets the honor of crashing the boards, brought to you by Chilton Auto Body. But 16 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, also 2 steals, and did not turn the ball over. Draymond was good. Was a volume scorer, 6 for 15. The Hornets were basically begging him to shoot, and he did at times. He did make 2 threes, 2 for 6 from downtown, but again, 16 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists. Draymond Green was very good in this game. That is Crashing the Boards, brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. You know who else deserves a shout for Crashing the Boards? That's Podziemski, because Podziemski, 11 rebounds in this game to go with his 19 points. Also had 2 assists. Podziemski, very, very good on the glass in this one for the Warriors, again, with those 11 rebounds. Warriors win this game. Final score, 119-101. Up next for the Warriors are the New York Knicks. Warriors in New York versus the Knicks tomorrow. Tip-off is at 4:30, which means pregame coverage here on 95.7. The game begins at 3:30. That will be with Willard and Dibbs. I got you covered on the postgame once again tomorrow night. Probably sometime around 7:30 or so is when our postgame will begin. Warriors wrap up, as always, here on 95.7. The game once Tim Roy wraps things up from Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden, by the way, that is a bucket list venue to watch a basketball game in. Warriors in New York versus the Knicks tomorrow at 4:30. Then in Brooklyn on Thursday to close out this road trip. That's also a 4:30 tip in Brooklyn on Thursday. Then they return home for, count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row at home. Detroit playing great basketball of late. Portland, pretty good of late as well. Sacramento, sneaky hot right now. The Sacramento Kings, after their latest win in Dallas, by the way, they have now won 4 games in a row. They're 7-3 quietly in their last 10. They had gone through a bit of a slump, and it kind of culminated with the Warriors dominating them to begin the second half of the season out of the All-Star break, but they have won 4 in a row since then. They're hot. They're only a half game behind the Warriors, and they're tied now with the Clippers. The Kings officially 8th, losing the tiebreaker to the Clippers. The Clippers 7, Kings 8, T-Wolves 9, all a half game behind the Warriors. Then the Mavericks a full game and a half behind the Warriors for the 10th spot, and the Suns are almost a mile away behind everybody else. But that's what's coming up for the Warriors on that homestand. It begins again with Detroit, then Portland, then Sac. All 3 of those teams playing pretty good basketball right now. Then the Knicks again at home, then Denver, then Milwaukee, then Toronto. So as you take a look at some of the recent stretch for these teams on this homestand coming up, not going to be easy. Detroit, again, one of the hottest teams in the league. Portland has been playing really good basketball like for a month now. They almost beat Cleveland in Cleveland the other day. Sacramento, we just talked about. The Knicks, a good team. Then Denver, they have beaten like the Warriors 8 times in a row in the regular season, something crazy like that. Giannis comes to town after that. Then Toronto. That's a difficult homestand, but the Warriors, again, will return home for that 7-game homestand beginning this weekend on Saturday. That comes, of course, after they wrap up this 5-game road trip in New York tomorrow and in Brooklyn on Thursday. Warriors get a day off in New York City. Might be dangerous. Also tomorrow, Draymond's 35th birthday. So Draymond's 35th birthday plus an off day in New York. Warriors might have a little bit of fun after the game. I'll put it that way. After the game in New York tomorrow, they might head out in the town that maybe they use Wednesday as a recovery day and get ready for the Brooklyn Nets coming up on Thursday to close out the road trip. Warriors trying to go 4-1 on this trip. They took a little bit of they tripped a little bit on Saturday with that loss to Philadelphia, but they're looking to bounce back against the Knicks on Tuesday, and then again Brooklyn on Thursday to close out the road trip. Speaking of, one thing I think we got to mention before we do get on out of here, and this will be real quick. Steve Kerr did say pregame today, essentially that the plan was for Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy Butler to all play tomorrow, which is good news. The plan ahead of time was no back-to-back offs for Steph and Draymond, and the back apparently not too big of a concern for Jimmy Butler to not play him tomorrow. I will say he didn't look completely himself, specifically offensively. Seems like the back might be bothering him still a little bit. We will see what the injury report is tomorrow once it comes out in the morning. But considering what happened tonight, Steph rolled his ankle, Podziemski had a knee thing, and GP2 got hit in the head by LaMelo Ball's head. Really, he got hit more in the face, maybe the forehead, maybe the nose, and had to be assisted to the locker room. Don't really know what the Warriors' injury report will look like tomorrow. All I will say is, again, pregame, Steve Kerr said the plan was for no back-to-back days off, that Steph and Dre and Jimmy were going to play. So we'll see if that is the case, but we'll keep an eye on Steph's ankle as he did roll it in the second quarter. That right ankle did not miss any time, but it was bothering him for a bit right after it happened. And again, what happens after you close out a basketball game and you take your shoe off and you get on the plane, it generally swells up. So we'll see what that is tomorrow for Stephen Curry. Whenever we get you any news, whenever we have any news, we will get that to you, of course, here on 95.7 The Game. It'll be Spadoni and Shasky in the morning from 6 to 10. And then Steiny and Goo, although Evan in for Steiny, so Goo and Evan 10 to 2. And then Willard and Dibbs tomorrow. They will be on the air until 4 to get you ready for the Knicks and the Warriors from MSG. Tomorrow tip-off is at 4:30. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Cam Williams behind the glass, for Chris O'Connell, my name is Mark Grandy signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in all day long. If you were watching during Knockout, yes, this is the champ talking right now, the back-to-back champ. Appreciate all the comments on our YouTube chat and on our text line. It was a really fun day here at 95.7 The Game, and thanks to all of you who were a part of it. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Warriors basketball here on 95.7 The Game. Until then, this is Mark Grandy signing off. Thanks for listening. We'll talk tomorrow here on 95.7 The Game.
Hey, not to be dramatic, but you should smell this.